let's do a January wrap up for what I read this January. So, at the beginning of the year, I set some goals for myself, kind of help expand my reading. So, one of the goals that I set was to go back to reading a professional development book every month. I also want to expand the genres that I've been reading, and so trying to add in a little bit more fiction, and then add in some fiction genres I don't normally read, in addition to the adding in some additional nonfictions. And I also wanted to read more perspectives. So looking at authors from marginalized communities, BIPOC or LGBTQ, disabled, those kinds of things. And so those are kind of my main goals. I'm trying to pick my books every month around that. So for my personal development book this month, I selected The Plan. The Plan is by Kendra Adachi. She is the author of The Lazy Genius Way. So The Plan is a productivity book, but her premise is that the productivity space is dominated by men, and so therefore it doesn't work for women because they're not taking into the account the extra duties that women often perform, especially if they have family and kids. And so she talks about setting priorities and focusing on more reaction than long-term planning. And one of the things that really stood out to me for that particular book was that the plan or the goal is not greatness. The goal is really more about the process. Okay. The goal is to be able is integration, is what she says. The goal is integration. So being able to integrate your plan into your life as your life stands. And so writing the plan based on what is going on in your season right now, and trying to narrow down the season of your life to be very, very specific for what it is you're doing. One of the examples that she gives is you are a working mom with a teenager. When narrowing that down even further, you're a working mom with a teenager who just got a cell phone. You're a working mom with a teenager who just got a cell phone and it's the beginning of the summer. You're a working mom with a teenager who just got a cell phone at the beginning of the summer and you have a huge project due at work in 3 weeks. Okay, so narrowing it down really narrow to create your plan. And she gives lots of little strategies throughout the whole book. I did really enjoy it. She talks about how women's cycles can actually affect their plan and their reactivity, and so trying to actually integrate that into your life and planning around it, so that you are working on the things that you need to be most creative about during the time of your cycle that you're most creative, and really focusing on certain things during the certain times in your cycle. So I really enjoyed it. Definitely recommend it for women. I don't know that men would find it helpful. They might. There are definitely some concepts I think that would benefit men as well, but definitely written more for a woman. So my nonfiction and also my marginalized book this month was How to Human by Carlos Whittaker. So Carlos is biracial, Mexican and Black author. He is a public speaker. That's how he makes a lot of his money, public speaking and writing books, very much in the religious space. So he references Jesus and Jesus' life a lot in the book. So if that's something that kind of turns you off, that's definitely something I'd say, hey, steer clear of this particular book. That is something that I have had problems with in the past. I don't really like when they bring in Bible passages to support like scientific research. That always just seemed really weird to me. But the way that Carlos does it, I didn't actually mind. He does reference Jesus a lot, but it's talking about, you know, how to love the people that we don't agree with, how to have compassion for them, and in doing and having compassion and being close to them and involved in their lives, they're more likely to listen to us and maybe, you know, change their minds. But the goal isn't to change their mind. Their goal is really just to love them. Really, really very interesting read. This one I did on an audiobook, so I could listen to him. He reads it himself. It does have a foreword by Sharon McMahon, who I love, and they're good friends. And definitely some very, very interesting stories that he tells from his childhood and his family to kind of help support what he's talking about. So if you enjoy storytelling in nonfiction, personal development books, that would be, I think you'd enjoy it. So in my fantasy or romantasy realm, I read Quicksilver by Hart. This one I listened to on audiobook. It's definitely recommended on audiobook for this one because it has a dual perspective. So you have the female main character and the male main character, and they are voiced by two different voice actors. I really enjoyed it. It's a very interesting premise. I enjoyed the world that has been set up. There's a little bit of a mystery involved that the female main character is trying to figure out. Some people might say that this is enemies to lovers. I don't know that I don't think I would classify it as that this way. I wouldn't classify them as enemies at the beginning. They just don't particularly care for one another. But, you know, it's a little bit forced proximity trope. They have to work together on solving this problem for their country. So he's fae, she's human. This book is fairly spicy. I would say it's probably at least a 3 out of 5 on like the pepper scale. It does not get into like BDSM or reverse harem or anything, which is what I would qualify as like a 5. But there are quite frequent and very explicit scenes. The male main character has an absolutely filthy mouth that comes out in those scenes a lot. And so if that's not something that you enjoy, maybe skip this one. But I did actually really enjoy the world building and the premise of this one. The other romantasy books that I read, Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. Fourth Wing was a reread in preparation for Onyx Storm. I really enjoyed Fourth Wing the first time around and the second time around. I know there are some people who criticize this particular book, and some of the criticisms I think are valid. I think sometimes the side characters are not well developed or described. So I would agree with that criticism. I do really like the story. I know some people are not a huge fan of Xaden. I like him. I definitely would not qualify this as enemies to lovers either. I know most people do. They're supposed to be enemies, but it's pretty evident at the very, very beginning that that's not going to be the way that this plays out. Iron Flame was a partial reread and partially finished. I read Iron Flame last year and only managed to get about halfway through it. Something happened in the book that I was like, I don't want to know what happens next. And life got in the way and I just didn't get back to it. So I read Iron Flame, the first part that I had read before, and then finished it. I did enjoy it. I do feel like the pacing was a little slow. I feel like this should have actually been two separate books, two shorter books, instead of the length that it was. I did find the continual argument between Violet and Xaden, the same argument they keep having, kind of annoying, as I know many have, but I did enjoy it. And so, yeah, I will be continuing on with Onyx Flame next, or Onyx Storm next, in the month of February. I also usually reread some YA books as I'm going to sleep. I listen to them. They kind of help put me to sleep. And so the books that I kind of used as my nighttime routine were Cinder and Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. I think a lot of people would maybe qualify these as fantasies. To me, they're really more sci-fi. I guess they could be considered fantasy, but I think in the YA book world, those two lines get blurred frequently, which is why they often actually get sorted together in bookstores and libraries. So I really enjoy the premise of, this human who's a cyborg, and their fight for Earth against the Lunars, the people that live on the moon. I like the premise of that series, and I think it's really well written. It's very descriptive, so definitely something I would recommend you check out. And then for contemporary romance, I read a couple of books. So Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams was recommended to me by the owner of Lovebound Library in Salt Lake City. She said she read it, really enjoyed it. It was a super quick read. Read it in 2 evenings. It's probably classified as an enemies to lovers. I think it probably is. Or maybe frenemies to lovers, really. They're not really true enemies. I did enjoy it. It was super fun. The characters were well written and developed. It is a little bit spicy. Not a ton. I'd say like 1.5. The author does actually put a warning in the book for which chapters have spice in them, so you can skip them if you want. So I really did enjoy that. And then for a book club, I read Keep Me by Sara Cate. This is billed as a dark romance. I would disagree with that. And if it is, it's really a really dip your toe. So if you've never tried dark romance, this might be a good place to start. But it doesn't get into some of the darker or like taboo themes that you kind of often see in dark romance. So premise is fake marriage, basically. The girl gets paid $10 million to marry this billionaire, this Scottish billionaire. because his family wants to get him out of his house. He's agoraphobic and hasn't left his house in years. So definitely deals with a lot of like mental health issues. She has major problems with her parents, and that's kind of a theme that runs throughout the book, which is kind of interesting. I did enjoy the character development in this particular book. However, I do feel like the ending was really, really rushed. Like she had to keep it under a certain page number and couldn't kind of flesh out the end of the story. And so the last part of the book is really, really rushed. The mental health issues that would have taken a long, long time to resolve kind of resolve themselves a little too quickly. And the resolution comes about a little too quickly, in my opinion. I did enjoy it. I would say that this is maybe a 3 on the spice scale. Just because of the nature of like the content. He's kind of been a player and has had, parties at his house with swapping and swinging and that kind of things. Now that doesn't happen in the book. There's not any cheating between the main characters in this particular book, but some major sexual themes. So if that's not something you enjoy, I would skip this one. And then the last contemporary romance I read was Icebreaker. I read this because it had so many bad reviews, and I was like kind of curious as to why people were hating on it, because this was like, oh, this book is so overhyped. This book is so overhyped. I'd never seen it hyped. I'd only seen it like, this book is terrible. So I was kind of curious as to what was going on. This is by Hannah Grace. I think I have not read, there was another book by her, I think, that people really, really enjoyed. And so thought that this one would be really good. So hyped it up, bought it, and then ended up hating it. And I can see why. A super slow kind of look and see how thick this book is for contemporary romance. It's nearly, it's 432 pages long, which is kind of long for contemporary romance. A lot of the same arguments happen over and over again. The spice is okay, but not all that well written. It is spicy. I would say it's probably a 3 just because of the frequency of the explicit scenes. Plot, very, very predictable. Character development is okay. It does deal with some emotional abuse from the skating partner. So the premise of this is the hockey team's rink is damaged, and they have to share the space with the figure skating team in a college, and the captain of the hockey team gets involved romantically with this figure skater who is part of a pairs team, and this figure skater partner is kind of controlling. He's been controlling what she eats. It complains when she gains weight and is really kind of a jerk. But this figure skater is like, he's my friend, he's looking out for me, whereas this captain of the hockey team like hates him. And so there's some tension there. The hockey captain punches her his love interest's partner. This partner gets injured another way and blames it on the hockey captain. Hockey captain gets pulled from the team and told he can't play until the male figure skater is cleared to skate. So there's kind of that tension throughout the book. But yeah, that's definitely one I think you can probably skip, unless you're curious like I was, why is everyone hating on this book so bad? But yeah, those are all of the books that I read in January. So stay tuned to the books that I read in February. I'm going to post which books I plan to read and and then we'll do a wrap up again in February.